takes
Question
longer.
twos are different for everyone. They're based on. They're based on.
Oh, okay. All right.
You want this loaded?
Yeah, you can go for it.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm hard of hearing, so if you whisper to me, I won't hear. We should stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, right? We should stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. It's not a government meeting, but I still think.
Yeah, no, no.
We're going to go ahead and start. So welcome to the Future Forward event. And before we begin, can I ask you to rise and help us recite the Pledge of Allegiance together? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. So we're very proud of April at Middlesex County College. Many things happen here all year long, but April is the beginning of high season of celebration. And we're fortunate this year that the Department of History and Social Sciences has put together for many years, but this year they outdid themselves, an entire month of events called the Arts and Sciences Festival, which they involve students and faculty and staff, as well as alumni and outside partners, on all kinds of events focused on a topic. This year's topic was Out of the Past, Into the Future, Reflections on the Arts and Sciences. And so a variety of presenters talked about issues relevant to today, and this is one of the final events of that month, but it's also Community College Month nationally. And so in honor of Community College Month, Michelle Campbell in the Office of Social Advancement, along with the faculty and staff from all over the college, put together this event to focus on helping develop future leaders. So I'm very thrilled that some of our students are here today to talk with elected officials and public officials about a possible pathway to public service and what it means to be engaged with your community, civic engagement. And so before we begin, I want to do a few thank yous. So we certainly thank our panel, and Tim Hack and others will introduce them in a minute and give you more chance to hear from them. I also want to thank some leaders who came from the outside, beginning with our trustees. We have Eileen Palumbo, who's the treasurer of our Board of Trustees, and Bob Orris from the Middlesex County Board of Trustees. We also, thank you. We also have representatives from our Middlesex County College Foundation Board. So Diane Comboy, the chair, and Charles Lawson, a trustee on the board. Thank you for coming. And we certainly have a variety of folks from all kinds of external partners, but especially other elected officials who are in the room. And so I want to introduce some of them. So from South River Council, Julie Mera, who's alumni of the college. I believe Virbhadra Patel from Woodbridge is here. We're expecting MCC trustee and Councilman Kyle Anderson from Woodbridge. And we have Joe Coyle from the Edison Town Council. We also have representing the New Jersey Council of County Colleges, the chair of that board, Phil Infante from Warren County. And we have a variety of members of the county administration, including Joe Krizza from the Department of Public Health and Safety, and Kevin Kurtzel from Business Development Education, and Brianna DeVoe. So again, thanks for coming. We're really glad to have faculty, staff, administrators, and the public here. And I'm going to introduce now Tim Hack to start the show. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick, and welcome. We have an excellent panel for you here today. Assemblywoman Nancy Pinkin was elected to the New Jersey State Assembly in 2013 and is currently serving her third term in office. Prior to this, she served on the East Brunswick Township Council from 2005 to 2014. Born in Plainfield and a proud MCC alumnus, Ms. Pinkin went on to receive a degree in science from Rutgers Newark and a master's in public administration with a specialty in health policy from NYU. Assemblywoman Pinkin has spent much of her professional career working on healthcare policy, not only in the private sector, where she is president of Pink & Associates, Inc., a health consultant and association management firm, but in the public sector, where her expertise has helped affect numerous policy and legislative changes. Freeholder Santi Nara was appointed to the Board of Chosen Freeholders in 2016. She chairs the County Public Safety and Health Committee. A North Brunswick resident, she graduated Georgetown University and then Georgetown Law. She currently practices law with the New York Legal Aid Society. Freeholder Nara served in various capacities in local government, including Township Council. She's a strong advocate for public safety and open space initiatives. Mayor John McCormick began his public career in 1992 as the CFO for the Township of Woodbridge. Since then, he has served in several state and local government capacities, including New Jersey State Treasurer for 4 years, and Mayor of Woodbridge from 2006 to present. Mayor McCormick has been a force in economic development in the greater Woodbridge area. During his tenure, 2 Amazon distribution facilities, Preferred Freezer, and Arizona Iced Tea have occupied warehouse space in his area, bringing much needed jobs and economic growth. Quality of life has also been a focus of his, with the enhancement of 100 acres of wetlands on the Raritan as recreation space and investments in parks and recreation facilities throughout Woodbridge. Councilman Kevin Delina is a lifelong Middlesex County resident. A graduate of MCC, he went on to get his baccalaureate degree at Rutgers University. He went on to receive a master's and finally EDD in educational leadership in 2017. He currently works at MCC as our events manager. You could say politics resides in Dr. Delina's blood. His father, Rick Delina, grandfather, Pete Delina, and his uncle, Stephen Delina, have served collectively 57 years in either local or county government. Following their example, Dr. Delina was elected in 2018 to the Saraville Township Council. Sitwat Saeed is a second-year student at MCC and our co-president of PTK. A liberal arts general major, she plans to study international relations and humanitarian affairs, focusing on public health. Ms. Saeed was named Coca-Cola Global Leaders of Promise and a part of the New Jersey All-State Academic Team. Only 2 students per county are chosen for this, by the way. And was a member of the National Education for Women Leadership 2018 graduating cohort. This summer, she will be participating in a fellowship program for the American Pakistan Foundation, working to improve water, sanitation, and education in rural areas. And finally, our moderator. Dr. Nicholas Archer received his PhD from UMass Amherst in political science. He's currently an assistant professor of political science at Middlesex County College, where he's served as the program coordinator for political science, and has helped, most recently, has helped start a journal called the New Jersey Journal of Political Science. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Archer.
All right, thank you, Tim, for the introduction. Thank you to all the people who are here today. Hopefully this discussion will be fruitful. So what I'll do first is go around the panel and ask a basic introductory question. After everyone's answered that, I will then go to some things that are more specific to each speaker. So we'll start with Assemblywoman Pinkin. First question I want to ask you is, tell us about your path to becoming an Assemblywoman and the role higher education has played in fulfilling your career and personal goals.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everybody for coming out. How many students are graduating this year? Oh, not that many. Interesting. Okay, well, for you, all of you, congrats. I'm sure you're anxious to get on to your career. But I was on the Student Judicial Board when I was at Middlesex County College. And by the way, I put myself through school So I went a very long way. Most people don't normally take that route to school. I had 3 older brothers, and my parents felt like, boys have to support their family, so they should go to school, and I should be a secretary, which I was like, not going to happen, but okay, fine. So, I started actually at a technical school, and then went to Union County College to take courses at night to allow me to get into a college prep course, and then went on from there. And then in addition to my master's degree, I have a postgraduate degree in health policy and fellowship from UMD&J. So most people don't take the long way like that. I wouldn't advise it, but such is life. But adversity builds strength, right? So even when I was at Rutgers, I was involved in, always involved in, judicial. I did that when I was at Union County Tech as well. I was always active. I would say my siblings would say I was nosy and I talked a lot. So I put that, adversity builds strength. So I put that into, being involved in the community. I was always involved with my kids, with the Parent Teachers Association. I was like the liaison to the school board. I was, the senator in my town was actually keeping kids from getting cigarettes out of the vending machine. So I went and volunteered for him and said that, I would volunteer for him because I thought that was an important thing to do. And he ended up being the chair of the health committee, inevitably, from my town, and I became his health aide, which I did through a fellowship through the university, and that's how I really got involved in the political end. I served at the council level for 9 years, and I was council president for a couple of years. I was on the planning board. I was always engaged in keeping an interest in what's happening in my community and trying to do what I thought was the right thing. I always would be reading the paper, which I still do all the time now, and voting. Voting is so important, and people will say, a lot of people will complain about government and talk about, the cost of college or whether people can get jobs or economic development. But none of that happens in a vacuum. Each one of us has a responsibility to be engaged and to know what's happening and to not to be complaining if we didn't step up and try to be engaged. Our community has changed a lot over the years. And by the way, I left New Jersey for my husband's training, so we lived in Chicago and Maryland and came back. So, I'm here because I chose to be here. I chose to come back and to be part of the community. So, I would say most people say when they think about their career, they wonder what they're going to do. And I think most people don't know what they're going to do when they're 40. So why should you know what you're going to do when you're 20, right? You pick what's passionate, but they say most people, their careers will change 3 times over the years. I mean, my expertise was in healthcare. I've been a hospital administrator. I've been an expert in ambulatory care services, but I also, got engaged. I started working on a panel probably 30 years ago on reform in healthcare, and still today, we're still talking about the same reforms in healthcare. So we're still trying to make that change, but I did that because it was something that I was interested in. So that's how, I started doing, when I worked for Senator Sinagra, I was, as his health aide, I thought, when I finished with that, it was a couple-year rotation, I thought I would go back into, starting my own consulting firm. But because there were so many health policy issues, rather than doing the consulting I thought I was going to be doing, I kept ending up going back to fight for health policy issues. So I, got engaged as an advocate for various healthcare groups, whether it was like federally qualified health centers or mental health parity, or I passed one of the strongest bills in the country as an advocate, not as a legislator, to allow people to get an artificial leg. There used to be a rule that for an insurance company, you could get 1 leg in a lifetime if you needed an artificial leg. Well, if you're a newborn, which as a healthcare person, I took care of a newborn that became an amputee, that's not gonna work, right? So you could get 5 heart transplants, but you could only get 1 leg. So I was always kind of brought back into fighting for some kind of social justice. And so that's why I switched over to becoming a legislator to have a more direct impact, and why I still feel drawn to fight for these issues every day.
Okay. Thank you. Next question goes to freeholder Nara. Similar question. Tell us about your path to becoming a freeholder and the role higher education has played in fulfilling your career and personal goals.
Sure. So let me just ask, how many of you actually know what a freeholder is? It's okay if you don't. Okay, so for those of you who raise your hand, in all of your towns, you have a mayor and council. Basically, the freeholders are that same form of government for the county. So here in Middlesex County, there are 25 municipalities, and there is a 7-member board of chosen freeholders that are voted for county-wide, and we basically administer, govern the county in terms of roads, county hospitals, the county jail, any county project. And many of you may or may not realize, if you look at your paychecks, there's a line in there where there's a county tax, and that's where we get all our money to do all of these projects. So in terms of how did I become a freeholder, I grew up, I wasn't born in this country. I was born in India, and my family immigrated here. And one thing, and I think some people who are immigrants may understand this, when you choose to uproot your lives and come to a new country, I know my family and many of my friends, they really got involved in paying attention to politics. And they really, because that was to them a way of understanding everything that goes on in their new country. So I grew up with a family that was like super, super aware and made themselves educated about politics because they wanted to really understand our adopted country. And so we moved here to New Jersey when I was 6 years old. I grew up in North Brunswick, and I had an incredible life, sort of like the American dream of like a really small town, terrific atmosphere, and great schools, and a lot of opportunities, playing sports and being involved in things. And I tell you this because it really fostered a deep love of the town for me. And it didn't keep me in New Jersey, though. I mean, I went away to college, and I stayed away for law school, and I ended up coming back to the area and living in New York because what Nancy was talking about, my passion was the law, and when I went away to school, I thought I was going to do international law and go live in Europe and fight war crimes. And when I was in college, a couple incidents occurred with friends of mine, and I realized there's a lot of injustice, unfortunately, here in the U.S., and so I switched focus, and when I graduated law school, I became a public defender, and that's what I've done for almost 26 years I've been a lawyer. I've worked for the Legal Aid Society in New York, and right now I'm a supervisor in the criminal division, so we provide legal counsel for the poor, anybody who's been arrested in New York City. And the background of that is I was living in New York for 14 years, and I lost my father. And we're a very tight family, and I'm the only one of my siblings who was able to move back home to be with my mom. And so that's directly how I got involved in politics, because my dad always wanted me to get involved somehow. And it's his death that sort of propelled me, because I was in the A&P one night during a weekday, ran into a high school friend of mine who was actually working for the Democrats locally. And when he found out I was back in town, he asked me to run for county committee. So, similar question, how many people here know what a county committee is? Okay, so the bottom line is every town is divided into districts and voting districts. So when you guys go vote, there's a district, and your district is represented by a Democratic committee man and a woman, and a Republican committee man and a woman, every district. And those individuals are really important because they live in the neighborhood. One of their goals is to get out the vote, but another goal, responsibility they have is to bring issues in their neighborhood to the local government. and to be sort of the eyes and ears of the electeds in those neighborhoods. So I became a county committee person because there was an opening. And that's how I got to meet the mayor and the council people in my town. And then the mayor got to know me. He asked me to be on planning board. And I would argue the two most important boards in any town are zoning and planning board. And why? Because one board plans for the future of your town, and the other board makes sure that any development or changes in the town fit the town's master plan and fit what the needs are of the community. So they're both super important. And I was working on the planning board. I was the only woman, and there aren't a lot of towns don't have a lot of women in these positions. And so from there, all of a sudden, there was an opening on town council. And so I'm going to remind you again, this is the place I grew up and I loved. So this was an opportunity to give back to my community. So I ran for town council. And I did that for almost 7 years, and then a position opened up on the county freeholder board. And if I love North Brunswick, I love Middlesex County. So I ran to fill that seat. I got it, and I ran 2 more times to keep the seat. And so that's what I've been doing now. So it's a part-time job because I still have my gig in New York. And so I'm still trying to check. I think I may be the only freeholder in the state that commutes out of state. And so even though it's not my area, like a lot of you all, I don't know how far some of you all come to school or to work here, but even though it's not my particular area, transportation is a big thing of mine. Because if you commute every day to New York, it's enough to want, sometimes it wants, you want to go postal. So right now on the freeholder board, I chair the County Public Safety and Health Committee, and it runs the gamut from overseeing the correctional center and being liaison to the county prosecutor's office and the medical examiner's office. And I will just point out, I'm a career public defender. So I know they've all been lovely since I've gotten on, but I know some of them must have had some qualms, right? Because I come from the other side. But because of my experience doing all of this, I do really have a good sense. I used to visit the correctional center when I was practicing for a brief time in New York. I used to, in New Jersey, I practiced there. So I was meeting clients in the correctional facility that I'm now, as part of my duties I oversee. So all I'm going to say is, in terms of the role of higher education, being a lawyer, there are a lot of lawyers in the state legislature. I'm the only lawyer on the freeholder board, and as much as sometimes I annoy them, I think it does come in handy. So my education certainly has put me in a good spot there. I'm also a trial attorney, so it's really easy for me to talk in front of big groups because I'm used to getting yelled at by crazy New York judges. So crowds like this don't bother me. So those are all things that can, help me. And education, doesn't matter what field you're in, any education you can use in public service. So the only thing I will say to you all is, if you're all, you're all here from New Jersey, whether you're from Middlesex County or not, there are so many ways you guys can get involved. And from becoming committee people, joining committees, every town has committees that they have openings for. The mayor might talk to you about it, but there's always ways, if you have a particular interest or you have a passion, you can just check and find out if your town has a committee about that, or maybe you go talk to your mayor or the council and say, can we have a committee on this issue? And trust me, they get very excited if people care enough to want to volunteer to work on an issue. So that's my story.
Thank you. Following with the theme here for Mayor McCormick, if you could tell us about your path to becoming the mayor of Woodbridge and the role higher education has played in fulfilling your career and personal goals.
Okay, so I graduated college in 1980 with an accounting degree. Went to work for one of at the time, the Big 8 public accounting firms. Now there's only 4. A couple of them merged and another one fell apart. So now there's 4 big firms. But I was with one of those 8 for a little over 8 years. And while I was there, I developed an expertise in government accounting, just randomly. Some people get assigned to construction clients, some get an insurance client, some get banking clients. I got the first government client that the firm had. They weren't in it when I went to work there, but I got it and I was on it, and then I was on another one. Before you know it, I became the government accounting person at the firm. During that, I got my master's in finance. So I worked there for 8 years, then left, started my own accounting business. And I did people's taxes, I did financial planning, I still did a lot of government consulting. And then 1991, a guy named Jim McGreevy was running for mayor of Woodbridge. I was very active at the Islam Knights of Columbus at the time, and he had a very, I think, very sound strategy of local politics where he would identify key people in each of the organizations. So he knew somebody in every Little League, every VFW, every PTO, every senior group, every Legion, every Elks, and I was the guy who came to from the Knights and asked me to work on his campaign. The town had a lot of problems at the time. Financially, the mayor was, some things were not being done right. I knew a lot about that because that was my field, so I could tell things that probably others couldn't. So when he asked me to help him with the campaign, it made sense to me because I knew what was going on. So then he wins, and then he was putting together his cabinet, and because I had the experience and because I had the advanced degree, he asked me to be the town chief financial officer, which I said yes to. I still kept my business. And I don't think if I didn't have a master's, I'm not sure if he would have asked me to do that because he put together a team where the top 8 people in his cabinet all had advanced degrees. And at that time, that was unheard of in local government. Our planner had an advanced degree. Obviously, our attorney did, our administrator did, our police director did, our health director did. Everybody had a really good pedigree. So he put together that team, and then he, 2 years later, ran for Senate and won. 4 years after that, he ran for governor and lost. And then at that point, we knew he would run for governor again, and we all were pretty sure he was going to win. So I stayed his entire career at Woodbridge. The last year, he took his administrator to work on his campaign, so I was also the town administrator. So I got to know a whole lot of stuff about government. And then when he became the treasurer, his plan for me was to stay behind and become the mayor. Unfortunately, him being the former mayor doesn't get to pick his successor. The town council did until the next election. Then they had their own idea, and they wanted one of the guys that's been around for a while. I was 43, he was 68. They said, look, you got time. We're going to make Frank the mayor for a while. So then the booby prize was I got to be the state treasurer, which wasn't such a bad booby prize, and I got exposure to all kinds of things at the state with investment policy, debt policy, tax policy. We did a whole lot of tremendous things down there. Carol Ortick is in the audience now. She's my current chief of staff and was my chief of staff in Trenton. She's also a former council person in Woodbridge, which is how we met. But then the whole time I'd say the second half of my CFO career and the whole time I'm in Trenton, my goal was to get back to become the mayor. And as soon as my term was up, I announced I was running. A lot of people in the town at the time weren't crazy about the fact that I was coming back to run, but it was something I really wanted to do. I got to watch McGreevy work. I got to see what he did that I liked. I got to see what he did that I didn't like, and I kept saying to myself, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I can't wait to get here. So when McGreevy no longer was the governor, Cody was the temporary governor for a year, I stayed for him, and then when that term was up, I left, announced I was running for mayor, started a little consulting business just to keep some money coming in. Then the mayor passed away, and then I ran for a one-year term in 2006, which I won, and then in 2007, a four-year term, 11 and 15, a four-year term, and then hopefully 2019, this year, another four-year term. Those of you from Woodbridge see me on their way out. I'll give you a mail-in ballot. But I just got to see it. I got to experience it, and now that I'm there, I'm never leaving as long as the people keep electing me. It's an amazing job. You literally, it sounds hokey, but you literally can change people's lives. You can really impact people's lives in such a positive way. When the kids ask me what's the hardest part of the job, the hardest part is the personnel stuff when you have to hire people and you want to hire them and you can't, or when you have to fire people and you don't want to fire them but you do. But the hardest part of the job is when you want to help somebody and they can't. Sometimes they have to refer somebody to the freeholders. Sometimes they have to refer somebody to the assembly. Sometimes they have to refer somebody to other entities. But all in all, being the mayor of your town, especially the town you grew up in, is just an amazingly rewarding experience to see people that you know. I still hang out with people I was in first grade with. But being the mayor is an amazing, amazing job in your local town. And I would recommend public servants, maybe not out front, not the first thing you do when you graduate college, but I tell people keep an eye on it, keep close to it. Maybe the committee is a good angle. In our town, we have wellness committees, we have environmental committees, we have all kinds of avenues for people to get involved and just get your foot in the door, meet the right people, stay close to it. You're not going to maybe jump in and start working for government right away. Maybe you will, but probably not. You're better off, getting your experience in your chosen field and then taking that experience back home to your local government. But keep an eye on it, raise your family, have your kids, and then at the right time, when you see an opportunity, take it. It's a very, very rewarding career.
Thank you. Again, moving along with the theme here for Councilman Dolina, if you could tell us about your path to becoming a councilman and the role higher education has played in fulfilling your career and personal goals.
So I graduated Woodbridge High School in 2006. I was a lifelong resident of Woodbridge Township until probably about 5 years ago I moved to Sayreville. Before that, I went to Middlesex County College, stayed here 2 years, and Middlesex really had a huge impact on my life. Not only were the small classes that were offered here great, but the faculty and the staff were very helpful. And it just shows that county colleges are important to the community, and it helps people grow as an individual, as myself. I went on from here to go to Rutgers, graduated there, started working at Middlesex in new student orientation, where I helped out advising new students, and then got a job in athletics because my undergrad is in sports management and economics. And then a job opened up in student activities and started working there. And then I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to begin the events management department where I currently am. So I've kind of been all over the ball, all over Middlesex County College, working in various departments, and it's kind of given me a good background of how to work well with people, not only with customer service, but understanding people's needs and trying to point them in the right direction, which has, as before what Professor Hack said, my family has a very deep background in politics. My grandfather was a freeholder of Middlesex County for 24 years. He has a park named after him, streets in Woodbridge named after him. Mayor McCormick was kind enough to name a senior building after him, a senior development housing. That was a very nice thing. We really appreciated that. So having different opportunities like that, seeing the great impact that my father, my grandfather have had on their communities. When I moved to Sayreville, I wanted to get involved, and one of the first things I did was I joined the I applied to be on the Board of Health, and I was given the opportunity to do that. And I served 1 year on the Board of Health in Sayreville, and then I was appointed to the Sayreville Economic and Redevelopment Agency, which is, they look at different areas of town that need to be redeveloped, and one of the major projects we were working on at that time, and we were still working on, is the Riverton development, which I don't know if anyone, when you guys drive over the Route 9 bridge or the Parkway Bridge, you'll see that empty space over there along the Raritan River. That's eventually going to be called it's going to be a town within a town. It's going to be called Riverton. There's going to be houses, and there's going to be townhouses along the water. There's also going to be stores, hotels, retail space. It's going to be a great thing when it comes to fruition. So being on that and getting to really know the people of Sayreville, and I was asked to run for council in 2018, so I did that, and I was fortunate enough to have a great running mate in Damon Enriquez and have the support of our county committee, as Freeholder Nara explained before. So we won in November, and I was sworn in January, and now I'm the liaison to the Planning Board and Zoning Board, which are two very important assets. We see, we plan for the future, like Freeholder Nara said, and we look to expand on what the town has already done. And my education has played an important role in this, as I said before, just seeing the opportunities that Middlesex has offered to students, like when I was a student and also as an employee here. I was fortunate enough to receive my master's degree and my doctoral degree in educational leadership, and actually being able to practice leadership while working and also researching the study of leadership was great to see. And now that I'm in this elected official position, I'm fortunate enough to put what I've learned in my studies towards helping others. And as the mayor said, it's kind of difficult when I've only been doing this for 5 months, but to tell someone that you can't really help them, and you kind of have to push them along to the next level, it's not really a good feeling, but you're hoping that, once they get to, someone who's at a higher level than you, that person will be able to help them as well. So.
Your path, you were doomed, man. From birth,
Yeah,
you were doomed.
it's
Because
a-
your grandfather, 24
Yeah.
years, father, who's one of my best friends, 24 years. You had no choice.
I did
No matter
not.
where you went to school, no matter what you wanted to do, you were predestined for public
Yeah.
service, my friend.
That I was. It's my blood.
All right, thank you. And our last introductory question is for our PTK president, Ms. Syed. If you could tell us about your path to becoming a student leader, as well as president of the Honor Society, and the role higher education has played in fulfilling your career and personal goals to this point.
Thank you, Professor Archer. My father just walked in, so that just turns to nervousness. Like, that's just next level nervousness. So when we talk about student leadership, we're talking about getting involved in whether it's a student government association, the college assembly, or just simply serving as a leader for a club you're passionate about. So I got my start in student governance through college assembly back in 2017. So I'd freshly graduated high school, and majority of my friends had moved on to four-year universities. So needless to say, I didn't have a lot of friends coming into MCC. So it was during the fall activities week. I was just wandering through the quad when I ran into Mrs. Joanne O'Brien, and she introduced me to the college assembly. She said, "Here's the form, fill it out, you know, come to my office, hand in your form." And I was immediately on board because the concept resonated very well with the career I wanted to pursue at that time. And I think it was, truly beginner's luck, because sitting in college assembly meeting as a student representative alongside deans and staff members and faculty, and realizing that what I had to say held the same value, I think that just opened my eyes to how meaningful our voice as a student can be once we start getting involved in this process. And from that, things snowballed into me getting inducted into Phi Theta Kappa, to becoming the vice president, then the president, then getting introduced to new leaders, National Education for Women in Leadership. So I did that program. I interned at the UN. I'm working with UNICEF. And now I'm sitting here in front of all of you alongside people who have way more experience than my existence, but things truly did snowball from where I started. And you mentioned higher education, so there's a lot that falls under the umbrella of higher education for me, right? There's the actual learning and critical thinking you do inside your classroom, and then there are the friends you make, the mentors you find along the way, and the opportunities you're introduced to through professors and peers. But if I could sum it up in one sentence, I think my experience with higher education, it's only been 2 years, but it has been very nurturing and empowering. So from professors constantly introducing me to new perspectives, to mentors encouraging me, the experience has been truly evolving for me. And there's a certain sense of confidence that higher education has instilled in me when it comes to my personal and professional goals. And to be very honest, it was through these out-of-class experiences with getting involved and these small leadership roles that I took on that allowed me to believe that I can take up a career in policy making and advocating. So I still have a long way to go when it comes to higher education, but yeah, the past 2 years, it has been very evolving for me.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we'll go on to, I think, what are a little bit more specific questions relative to each speaker. We'll again go back to Assemblywoman Pinkin to begin. The question is this: the cost of attaining a college degree in the state of New Jersey has grown significantly over the past 20 years. Not only tuition, but the other costs associated with obtaining an education, such as textbooks, fees, and living expenses, have many people wondering if college is even worth it. Tell us how you and the state legislature are addressing the higher education affordability crisis, and what can students do to help make higher education affordability a legislative priority?
Well, you know, I said then I should have brought I still have a little notebook that I kept when I was a student that I recorded like every expense that I had, you know, because as I said, I put myself through school, and one of the reasons why I started at a lower level, because I thought, well, the idea of going to 4 years of school just seems so insurmountable to me. I mean, I worked full-time when I went to school. At one point, I was taking 24 credits and working full-time, and the job that I had was not a slacker job. I worked in a pediatric neonatal intensive care, so it wasn't the kind of job that you sat and read your homework in between, you know, whatever else you were doing. So I think it's twofold. I think the students have to be, let me ask this, how many students here that are students also have a job besides? A lot, okay. Which, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I was raised that you just don't take out debt, right? I didn't actually take out any debt until I was in graduate school. And the reason I did it then was because I actually lost my job because the hospital was closing and it was being moved to 2 other hospitals and being divided up. So it was a matter of necessity, but I have long been an advocate for dealing with the cost of college. Now, many of the colleges would say that New Jersey doesn't pay enough for our students. Now, that's an issue that many people have long discussed. You know, we are a state, unfortunately, that's fiscally challenged. We have the former treasurer here, so he can address that as well. But, you know, we are, I don't know, would you say we're close to bankruptcy, but we're very challenged. So we have to look at what we can do more with less. One thing, you know, my degree from NYU was in health administration, and efficiency and effectiveness was in every paper I wrote. And still today, I believe in that. We have to be as efficient, as effective as we can. We can't just keep layering on costs in the state. We have to peel back the layers and see how we can be more efficient. I had worked with a package of bills with Senator Cryan that addressed the cost of college education. It had everything to do with, you know, can you be forced to take a meal plan? Now, at the colleges, honestly, I don't know about Middlesex, but didn't love that. They like to have students take a meal plan. But, you know, I myself, when I always say this story, when I was in school, we couldn't afford to eat, really. So we would put, like, cereal in our cat food for our cats because they couldn't afford to eat either, you know. So cereal used to be cheap then. But, like, I always had roommates, you know, I always, you know, was doing different things to try to, you know, get through from one day to the next, really. And, you know, Rutgers did do, Dr. Barchi did work on the open textbook issue. You know, that was another expense, the cost of textbooks, and whether or not the schools have to take back the cost of, take back those books, which are very expensive. We did a bonding, which I really didn't think would pass at the time, to make more colleges, to make more seats available for New Jersey colleges, because many of our students go out of state, and they were going out of state, one, because we were bashing New Jersey, and it was like kind of like if you went in-state, you know, that was like considered, there was something wrong with you, right? And even, I have to say, for Middlesex, I can't tell you how many times people would say they apologize that they go to Middlesex County College. Why would you do that now? You know, people should be so thankful that they can go, right? Because you can get the same education at a much more affordable rate. In fact, when I went, a lot of the courses that I took, I had to keep retaking, because every time I went to a different school, they were not giving me credit for the courses I already took. So it's a big passion for mine. So I also, one of the pieces of legislation was requiring counseling, so that what would happen to me, and I'm sure what happens to many students, is that, you know, you're in a semester and all of a sudden, you know, you're kind of on your path to go forward, and you realize that you didn't have the right course to fit in, or it wasn't in the schedule, or you have to take it over. I had a course I was taking at Rutgers where they're like, well, we're not counting that course anymore. Now we want you to take this course. Well, that might have been, I felt it was flippant on their part to say that I had to now take another course that I was paying for while I was working. I could barely get out of bed in the morning. I'd be so exhausted. And now I had to take another course. So I think that they should really, you know, we have a lot of colleges, we have a lot of computers and smart people here. They should be able to map that better so that you can get out in 2 or 4 years. A lot of there's a tendency to students to, elongate their education, and sometimes it's because instead of taking 15 or 17 credits, they're taking 12, and that's increasing their debt. And not only, by the way, it's 1.6 trillion, I keep saying million, trillion dollars worth of debt in our students, which is totally unacceptable. You know, you had people selling credit cards on a college campus, which, you know, I was fighting against, because that's just making you have more debt on top of that. You know, so I think we really have to fight for this. It's really a crisis, and we have to do everything we can to make that affordable, to get you out on time, and to help students to get a job when they get out. Now, one thing that I do is I'll take as many interns and students in my office that my staff will put up with, because I also believe that a lot of students don't know how to work. They don't know how to have a job and to get a job and to get to the next level. Another thing that I try to do is partner with women so that they know how they can advance themselves by keeping track of their data, looking at how they can negotiate to get a better salary as they go forward. Now, when I was a student, fortunately when I was in graduate school, I had National Direct Student Loan. I had 3% interest, and believe it or not, Mayor McCormick, at the time, the interest in the banking was 20%, right? That's what you were making on bank accounts. So I would get my student loan money, let's say it was January 1st, I'd put it in the bank so I could be making that 20% and pay out as, you know, take as long as I could to pay the tuition so that I could hold on to that and make that little bit of money that I could survive on. We used to have like oil heat, and I couldn't afford to have enough heat. I used to keep the heat in my house on 60 degrees because that's all we could afford to, we couldn't afford to have it any higher than that, and we would have roommates and all that. So, you know, I do think it's a crisis, and I think we have to do more. I also go against when people talk about colleges and they say, well, we have dorms with granite countertops. Well, you know what? That sounds really great, but you cannot afford to pay your tuition, but yet you have a granite countertop. Like, who cares about that? You know, we have to make it so it's cost effective. Now, as far as paying more to the colleges so that the tuition is lower, you know, that's something that we have to try to keep our state fiscally balance, and I think we have to look at ways to be efficient. One of the things I've been working with the freeholders with is how to have more shared services so that we can keep the taxes lower so that we have the money to invest in things like higher education. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is for Freeholder Nara. I think you already sort of addressed this in your answer to the first question, but maybe you can elaborate. If you can tell us about some of the policy responsibilities freeholders have and that address students that they might be unaware of. And secondly, why is it important for young people to become involved in county government?
Okay, well, I had mentioned before the public safety side, but my committee is actually public safety and health. So I talked about the jails and everything, but I also have departments that I oversee that are the public health inspectors for the different towns and for the counties. Little things like when you guys go buy deli meat, right? If any of you can afford the deli meat, because we're talking about expenses and stuff. But when you guys go and the guy behind the butcher counter or the deli is like measuring out your turkey, right? Those go on weights. So there's actually people in the county who work for my department who have to make sure that all of those weights work. When you go get your gas, everything else. So there's like day-to-day things in your lives that people don't realize how those things get overseen, how those things get monitored, and a lot of that ends up becoming the county. And so my fellow freeholders, we're divided up. Somebody takes care of infrastructure, which are the county roads and bridges, someone else and parks. So we have a really vibrant parks system here in Middlesex County, and that's because we're really committed to having that free open space for all the residents. Part of that also is I don't know how many, Middlesex County is really interesting because on the one end we have these very urban towns, right? When you get to Carteret and Sayreville and Woodbridge and Edison. But on the other end, you know, we have a lot of farmland still, and I don't know how many people realize how much farmland we have in Middlesex County. And part of the reason is because our Board of Chosen Freeholders is very committed to keeping farmland as farmland. So we have a policy when a farmer is done farming and their kids don't want to farm and they're not passing it on, we make our best efforts to buy that land so we can preserve it as farmland. And there are a lot of people who now farm our areas where they couldn't afford to keep that land as part of theirs, or there are existing farmers who take it on, or new farmers. And we work really hard with Rutgers, actually, because they have a great agricultural program. And I know during the mingling, a couple of you all were interested in ag, degrees at some point, and were mentioning going to Rutgers. We have a number of Rutgers students and grads who are now farming in Middlesex County because they can farm smaller plots based on the county land. There's a ton of things we do, like for the arts. We're huge on the arts here in Middlesex County, and for any of you who've seen the building going up in New Brunswick, but it's not just New Brunswick. There's the Art Center in Avenel opened, right, which, you know, we were working on with Woodbridge to open. We're hoping to have arts centers all over the county because that's really a big important thing. We're not all about just going to work, right? We're also about our culture and creating all those opportunities for people to go see plays and not go into New York, right? You can get amazing opportunities to see bands and plays and all sorts of things here in Middlesex. So those are all the different things that the Freeholder Board oversees. How you guys can get involved is the fact that there are a lot of programs. I mentioned you guys getting involved in maybe boards in your hometown, but we have county boards. And so there's a whole bunch of you all who are bio majors, right? Then I met, unless you all snuck out, I met a bunch of you before. We have a lot of county programs in our county health department. I mean, people don't realize we go out and, you know, we do clinic shots for the flu and the measles, and we do educational programs. There's lots of ways. We have internships where you can come in and work with our departments, and then that can go on your resume, or it can help you guys land the next job, or maybe in the future a county job. We have our program right now with the county is we take a lot of interns, and a large number of them become full-time employees after a couple years. They've interned for us for a summer or two, then they come on for a year, and they morph into terrific jobs with great benefits. So that's on your career side, but then just as residents, you guys should care. I'll give you one little story about, like, from my life. I'm an immigrant, right? And it was really important to me when I became a citizen. And I think for any of you all who are immigrants now or who have immigrant family members, you know, now more than ever, having your citizenship is like a shield, right? It protects you from so much. And when you don't have that citizenship, it means you're vulnerable to so much. And one of the things that happened when I became a freeholder is there became an issue with our county detention center and immigrants who are arrested, whether they came here lawfully or unlawfully, but when they're arrested, they're treated differently than people who are citizens. And, you know, I'm a public defender, but that doesn't mean I'm like, yay, crime, you know? I just think that when somebody's arrested, they ought to be treated fairly, that everybody who's arrested ought to be treated fairly, no matter where they're from, what state, you know, whether they're a man or a woman, the color of their skin. And so the same thing, people don't realize, but way back in the early 1800s, the Supreme Court of the United States said, it doesn't matter who you are, if you've got even 1 foot on American soil, the Constitution applies to you. And we should want that. We should want to be the fairest country in the world. And so there were some things going on at our detention center because of the way the federal government and ICE works, and it really wasn't fair. And so one of the things when I became a freeholder really early on is the Freeholder Board, we changed the whole policy. And it became a really big struggle. There was a lot of press. There's still a lot of things. I know ICE hates us now in Middlesex County, but I tell everybody, I'm so proud of living here because the one thing we said in Middlesex County is that this is America. And in America, we treat everybody with the full weight of the Constitution. And so But I got to tell you, the reason I bring it up is I never thought growing up here, Middlesex County, North Brunswick, Middlesex County, that being a freeholder would give me a chance to do something that actually had some national implications. It never occurred to me in the first couple months that like what we were doing here was going to be in the press, and it was going to be, people were calling from all over the country saying, how are you doing that? We want to do that too, not just in New Jersey. And so you never know. The little thing that you care about, if you work on it, the sort of big effect it can have, and even if it doesn't have a giant effect, if it just has an effect on your little area, you can't imagine how it makes you feel when you go to bed at night. So I'm just saying, all of you guys, whether it's an interest in public health, whether you want to do ag, get a degree in ag, or anything, all of these things mean so much. And I'll put in a plug because I don't know if we'll come around again. In terms of the ag, which is also a huge passion of mine, because my family were farmers in India and subsistence farmers. So my one grandfather, what he grew, all his kids ate. And if there was a little left over, that was like happy news, right? So the farmers here in this country, I really have a lot of respect for, anywhere in the world where they farm. And Middlesex County has a thing called McFoods, and we try to deal with people's food insecurity. So one of the things we're doing with the farmers is we're doing gleaning. And do you guys know what gleaning is? It's like collecting, sometimes when you go, especially Whole Foods or all these other places, you see these nice, shiny, perfect apples, right? And nobody wants to buy the apples that are a little lumpy or misshapen, but they taste just as good. Or the ones that fell on the ground, they don't sell those. So gleaning means you can go out and you can pick all of those fruit, leftover fruit, the stuff that's on the ground, whatever, and donate it to the food banks. And the farmers in Middlesex County have been willing to let us do that. So the freeholders, we're going to do a gleaning because there's the best corn you've ever tasted in your life is aftermarket corn. I bet you guys didn't even realize it. It's like, I've never tasted anything as good as this, and the farmers were telling me they don't sell this stuff. So,
We have to have a Middlesex County gleaning.
oh, we're going to do it. So I'd love to do it with the college. If you guys want, we'd love to have a day with the freeholders and the college students, because that food is like a blessing for people. So, so we'll set that up.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is for Mayor McCormick. Tell us how you manage the public concerns over resource use with the need for economic development, and how can municipalities encourage more involvement from young voters?
Well, in Woodbridge, I think our most important job right now is economic development. It's been the thing we've concentrated on since we got there. Carol, my chief of staff's in charge of the redevelopment agency. Is my most important person doing the most important job, and that's been our focus for the last 12 and a half years. You have to bring the jobs. You have to bring the companies in. You have to bring the tax ratables. 9 times out of 10 in the spots we're developing, they're contaminated sites or polluted sites or otherwise challenged sites that otherwise wouldn't get developed unless we paid attention to them. In most cases, we give little tax breaks to encourage people to come in. There is no more important thing right now for us than economic development. We've done all the warehouses, a couple of power plants, a whole bunch of non-residential things, and now we're starting with the residential development, and particularly our downtown Woodbridge, where we'll probably have 1,200 more luxury apartments built in the next couple of years. It's probably a political risk to do that, because as people run against me this November and run against my team, they'll say overdevelopment, too many apartments. But if we don't do it, Woodbridge will become a ghost town. If we don't do it, other towns will get these projects. Other towns, we have great assets. We have the Metro Park train station. We have the Woodbridge train station. We have the Avenel train station. We're fortunate we have 3 train stations with lines to New York. That's what people want. That's where they want to live. We've got to keep developing downtown. It doesn't cost us a lot of resources because most of the investment comes from the private sector, but we do focus on it as much as possible. As far as more involvement from young voters, like I said before, I started thinking about it when everybody else was talking. You're probably not, if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior level, you're 19, 20, 21, you're probably not living in the town you're going to raise your family in. So it's difficult to think that you can get involved, because before you know it, you're going to get a job. Before you know it, you might be moving. Before you know it, you're going to fall in love, and you're going to move somewhere else. And I don't know what the stats are, but it's probably more than likely that you're not living where you're going to raise your kids. I'm living where I raised my kids. where I grew up and where I raised my kids, but it's not always the case for the students here. You're going to go to a four-year college, hopefully. Who knows where that is? Who knows where it's going to lead? So that's why I say keep an eye on things. There's so many things that you guys are passionate about, like the environment, that people like me, although don't get me wrong, I'm not dispassionate about the environment, but people in our age level don't have the same enthusiasm for it as you do. We don't have the same enthusiasm for wellness as you do. So I say again, find a sweet spot, get active, and when the time comes, when you see the opportunity to get involved in your local government in whatever level, what is the boards people are talking about, the committees, pay enough attention to it and keep involved in it, and when the time comes, pounce and make an effort to really get involved.
Thank you. Next question again is for Councilman Delina. Tell us about the biggest challenge you face working with other members of the City Council, and why is it important for students to be aware of how city governments operate?
So one of the biggest issues you kind of face when you're working on a team is everyone has their own personalities and everyone has different things you want to accomplish. But what's great about being an elected official, especially at a local level, is everyone is working towards the same common goal, which is to better your town or your borough or wherever you live. And working on a team, it can be difficult at times. You're trying to keep everyone on the same page, but regardless of your political affiliation, you always want to make sure you're doing what's best for your residents. And I think every elected official will tell you that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to work for you. You know, we're put in this position as public servants to better not only New Jersey, Middlesex County, Woodbridge, or Sayreville. We're here just to better the overall experience you have of living in that town, whether it's stabilizing taxes or paving roads. I know that's one of everyone's biggest complaints. It's always to us in Sayreville is how come my road hasn't been paved yet? When is my road going to get paved? And then people have to understand that there's this whole process that you have to go through in order for your road to get paved. So those are different areas that we have to focus on, as a team collaboratively, all council members, the mayor of Sayreville, and we've done a good job of doing that. I've been only doing this for 4 months now, but I feel in these 4 months we've already accomplished a lot. We've already put together a budget for 2019, and that was a major step. We have to meet with each individual department. They give us a wish list of what they want to accomplish, and we have to sit down and say with them, yes or no. And we look at it and we say, okay, will this benefit our residents of our town? And most of it will. And there's some stuff that we say, okay, we'll put off to next year. So that is that's what it's like working on a team with a bunch of people who are trying to accomplish different things. But we all always have one major goal. And it's important for students to understand how your city government operates, because a lot of you don't recognize, I'm guessing, I know I didn't recognize, my family was heavily involved in politics, the impact that local government has on your everyday life. Again, as I said, you could drive over a road where there's a major pothole and it hasn't been fixed in years, and you'll get flat tires and things like that, and you'll say, oh, I don't know, whatever, it is what it is, I'll just go pay $200 for a new tire. There's different things like that you need to recognize, that you have a voice within your town to go and attend council meetings, learn what's going on. It's really important for people your age, especially the younger generation. I'm young, but I'm not in my 20s. It's important for all of you to get involved and understand how your local council serves you, what they can do, and the best way I could tell you by doing that is attend a council meeting, watch them on YouTube. I know everyone has YouTube on their cell phones. Go on YouTube, Google, find out what's going on, attend different types of meetings, not only council, planning board, see what's going on in your town, and that's the best way to understand.
Thank you. Okay, our final question is for Ms. Syed. Tell us what you think is the greatest hindrance to students getting more involved in campus governance. And what is the most important issue on campus that students should be aware of that they may not be aware of?
Right, so I truly believe that there's more to the college experience in general than the classroom, right? And I strongly believe in the idea that you have to work with what you have and you have to make the best of it. And regardless of what college campus you go on, there are resources there for you. And when it comes to college governance, we can talk about the fact that it is a great resume builder, but for me, it has proven to be, it has helped me shape my character and my personality. Through the various experiences, big or small, you learn about your strengths, your weaknesses, what you like to do, what you dislike doing. And talking about college governance, I think until you actually get involved in it, you don't understand how big of an impact you're capable of making. And at least that was the case with me. I realized that I'm capable of getting my voice heard, and I was very fortunate that I found out about college assembly so early on in my career, right? So when we talk about hindrance, I think the biggest thing is getting the word out to the students, getting them to attend a meeting and say, hey, this is how it all goes down, and you can be a part of it. And so again, through college assembly, I learned that I was capable of making changes across the spectrum, right? Whether it's diversity or curriculum. And yes, you don't get to approve or disapprove of those changes, but just the fact that I can have a say and, draft something, have it sent up to the president. I think that, again, the hindrance is that students don't know, they're not aware that they have the right to do this. And again, not just through college governance, but even just involvement through an organization or a club. Like leading PTK, I learned that I could stand up and host a whole event for my causes. And, Student Life with Mr. O'Day, they would get behind it and they would help me, whether it was raising funds for something I was very passionate about. So all these things are available for you when it comes to college involvement. And again, I think that college involvement and involvement in college governance on a larger scale, I think it just leads to an efficient institute, if that makes sense. And again, my parents would probably disagree, but in my opinion, there's more to the college experience than just sitting behind a desk and learning from a textbook, right? We've been doing that since we were 4. So there's a certain sense of freedom that comes with higher education, and I think it's about making the best of that.
Thank you. By my watch, we're a bit over time. Did we want to extend time here for questions from the audience? Maybe 2 questions from the audience? Okay, so if you have a question, if you just would like to raise your hand and come up to one of the microphones.
I would like to thank all of you for your public service. And my question is, what can we do to inspire our young adults to get involved in social issues? The sad part is they don't even go out to vote. So what can we do to inspire them to know what's on the ballot for the local issues?
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Middlesex County College did a voter registration recently, which was super great. So they should continue to do that. Have forums where they can have students just get together and talk about the issues that are on their mind. Things that, there's so much happening at the state, local, and national level. There's lots of opportunity and lots of subjects to talk about. So I think having them be engaged is important.
And things like this, this is important. Even though there's not a packed house here, it's on TV. I'm sure it's going to be YouTube, so all the teachers should encourage their students to watch it and see, for an hour, it's worthwhile. And I just think, Mr. President, second most famous McCormick now in Middlesex County. I just want to say congratulations. I think the board made a phenomenal choice when they made you the permanent president. And, keep doing things like this.
The only thing I would say is there have been different generations who've had triggers, right? Like the Vietnam War and civil rights and women's rights. And so I'm kind of hoping that this current generation starts getting angry enough that you all start getting off your butts. Because the only thing, I think, everybody says things about millennials and stuff like that. And I think you guys have so much potential. You're so smart about so many things. And you get information in ways that, we can't even begin to fathom, and how quickly you get information. I don't necessarily think it's the fact that, like, the students here don't get information. I just think that there's almost too much coming at them and at you guys at one time. And you have challenges where, you know, if I thought college was expensive for me, I can't even begin to compare what it's like for you guys. So, like, everybody's got jobs and is going to school. So I just think that you may not realize how, like, with a little bit of time, like a lot less commitment of time, you guys could impact things in terms of politics. You know, I've seen people do it with like one tweet, right? I mean, there's somebody else I know who tweets all the time, and I don't know how much, but like one tweet, like I see AOC now, you all know who AOC is, right? And that's because she's like this master of social media. And if someone can do it like her, who came out of nowhere, and now she's in Congress, I don't think any of you guys should feel like you have a limit, you know? And even if you don't want to serve in elected office right now, you guys could just use your social media savvy to really affect how people think, because like I start getting stuff from people and you don't understand, you guys just like emailing us or calling us, and you can't, I'm not on Twitter, so I'm supposed to get on it because supposedly I'll get a lot more feedback from people, but the fact is when you guys communicate with us, we actually pay attention. And the more we hear from people, the more it actually gets us into a position of action. So you have a lot more influence than I think you guys know. So I just hope that you all, you know, get motivated.
Well, I'll just add one more thing. There are groups that you can join. The Young Dems in Middlesex County is hugely active. There's probably a Young Republican Club, I'm not really sure. But, and I will say this for Rutgers, Dr. Barchi has been very open to students having a say and to having forums and to being active when an event comes up. And he's, you know, goes to them and listens to what they're saying. They have a group that's very active in social issues, and they write a lot in their newspapers. So there are all of those ways that you can get involved. And, you know, again, in our office, we have students there all the time. They're all super amazing, and I would not say that they're not engaged. I think they often are engaged. But it is important to vote. There's nothing more important than voting, I think.
And to just go off of that, I think as a 20-year-old, I think it's the fact that there's a certain gap between us and our politicians that needs to be bridged. And again, it's like you guys said, it's like panels like this or discussions like this where I learn about the opportunities that I can sit down, write an email to my councilman, and get things rolling to get it to the next level. I think that's the awareness we need as young adults.
Hello, my name is Willietta Gombe. I am a public health major. So a lot of what all of you said really resonated with me, especially Assemblywoman Pinkin. A lot of your story actually resembles a lot of mine, what I'm going through right now. One of my first question is, how can we get in contact with all of you regarding, maybe we might have questions later, can we come up and get your business cards, exchange information, how would that work? And then secondly, my other question is, how are you bridging the gap within racial, gender, and cultural communities from your various offices? Thank you.
Well, first of all, you can look up our office at any time. Rob Zuckerman is my chief of staff. He's in the back of the room. Contact Rob anytime, but you can call our office, any office. I don't care if it's council, mayor, you know, whatever. Call them, contact them. You know, people will say, oh, there's a pothole on my street, and they're complaining about it, but I'm like, but did you call about it? You know, it doesn't take anybody exceptional to do that. Just pick up the phone and call or email or whatever. We're happy to do that. You know, contact us at any time. And let's see, what was the other question about?
Networking with you guys. Networking? No. Yeah, you can hear. Between.
One thing I was going to say about that is that we, again, on a partisan level, We have a lot of different caucuses that address those issues within the Democratic Party. I mean, I think pretty much all of us up here happen to be Democrats coincidentally. But there's also a program called Ready to Run, which is through the Eagleton Institute, and they have a lot of forums on helping people that not only either want to run or they want to be involved in the campaign or they want to get involved in government, and there's all different little subsets that they do training on so that we can address those minority disparities. And I think that's something that we've been focusing on a lot in government, trying to address that both on the policy forum and on having people be active in the process.
Any government official that doesn't bridge the racial or the gender gap does so at their own risk. I mean, your council, your board of education, your elected, your planning board, your zoning board, all your committees have to look like your town, or you're doomed. If I had 9 whites on my board, 9 whites on my council, I'm a white mayor, and there's a white superintendent, I wouldn't get elected next time, because I'm approaching the point where our school district is probably just about 50% white and 50% non, and probably in a few years our town will be down to about 50% white and 50% non. So our board has an Asian Indian, an African American, and a Hispanic, and our town council has an Asian Indian, African American, and a Hispanic. If that wasn't the case, how can I go to a community? How can I go to the Independent Club of Colonia? How can I go to Albert's Palace or the Chow Petty restaurant? How can I go to all these different places and bring nothing but white people with me? It doesn't work. So you've got to insist that your local officials, when they're naming people to the planning board, to the zoning board, to the wellness committee, to the historical association, to the environmental commission, they've got to make sure that their boards, elected or not, represent the people that in the community where they live, or they're not going to be elected too much longer.
You know, there's one little interesting case that is happening right now with the elections, and that is that we have a role which was set up so that women could advance in politics, so that every committee district seat is a man and a woman, and that was thought to be helping women to get engaged in the process. But there was recently a court challenge where 2 women said that they were challenging that, and some people said, well, we weren't ready to change it because women still aren't at 50% of the people in office, but they did on their own take that challenge up. Maybe Shanti can say more about it. I don't know if you know about it, but and they won. And this happened right. It's happening in the middle of the election, so it's going to cause some turmoil to see how that's changing it. But they just felt like they wanted to run. They were challenging those 2 seats, and it was overturned in the courts. So there's always a way to get engaged in many different ways.
Well, I'll just touch briefly on that, because that's, in one town, that's because 2 women wanted to run, and they were like, why is there only 1 woman's seat for the county committee I was telling you guys about before? But in another town, there was someone who is non-binary, and they wanted to run. But, you know, they're saying, why do I have to identify with one gender or the other to run? So that was part of the whole lawsuit. And so the court ruled on the challenger's behalf. So now they're saying in Middlesex County that anytime someone wants to run, they don't have to identify. And if 2 women want to run, they can, which by the other side, 2 men could run for those 2 seats. But someone who's non-binary or someone who's transgender, they can identify or not identify however they choose. So that's a change. To your other question is, I'm really super aware of the fact that I was the first South Asian to ever be a freeholder in the state of New Jersey, and I'm still the only South Asian woman. There are not, I mean, for what New Jersey, everybody thinks we're such a blue progressive state. We still don't have enough women in office, and we certainly don't have enough women of color. I mean, there have been men in the South Asian community who've been mayors, who've been council people, who've been in the assembly. You know, I'm the highest South Asian woman, and it's still freeholder. Like, we don't have any South Asian women in the assembly. And I would definitely say we don't have enough women of color from other communities in the assembly. And, you know, Bonnie Watson Coleman, who is one of my heroes, is the only woman that we send to Congress from the state of New Jersey, right? And it's ridiculous that the state of New Jersey only has one woman. But that's got to change from a lot of you guys, right? Because there are, if you're not ready, if you're not ready, you've got to go support women who you think should be doing it, who you can support, because we've got to see a lot more change in New Jersey, because it's really kind of ridiculous, and you can go look it up. There are some states you would be surprised have way more representation by women and people of color than blue New Jersey. So a lot of that means it's once again what we were saying before, you guys have to vote. Because I would just assume that this younger generation, when I see this lawsuit, right, and people are saying, don't label me, right, and don't box me in based on your labels, that's from, the people who are challenging it were mostly like younger people. And so I have to imagine your generation wants to see like something different. And so that's only gonna happen if you vote. And honestly, there's not a huge turnout in the age group that we're talking about here, right? Your professors are all voting, your parents are all voting, and then you guys aren't. And I'll tell you one thing I say is if you don't vote, it's really hard for me to listen to you, right? Because I sit there and I go, people come to me all the time, and then I ask them, did you vote? And not just your age, other people, and they didn't, and I'm like, oh, great. So why should I care as much? And we're supposed to care about everybody, right? But when somebody doesn't participate in the process, it makes me, I'm much more, I'd rather listen to this side of the room who participated in the process than the people who didn't and just complained, right? So you guys, if you want to see change of any kind, you just have to not only register to vote, you have to show up and vote, and you don't even have to show up that day because, as the mayor said, there are these awesome things called vote by mail now. It used to just be absentee ballot, but now you can just do it. And then you don't have to worry about missing class or missing a party or missing whatever, right? Or missing a work. You can just vote by mail, so there's no excuse. Okay? I know, you gotta get out of here.
Okay, since we're at time, or I think a little over, I will close the time for questions and turn things over to Dr. Hack, who will wrap us up.
How about one more round of applause for our panelists? Thank you again for sharing your stories and your time with us. It was extremely enlightening. I believe everyone enjoyed it. And again, thank you all for coming out this afternoon. It's quite beautiful outside. I'm sure you had several more important things to do, but we appreciate you coming out. At this time, we'll commence the panel. We do have student-led tours. They will be meeting in the lobby outside of West Hall, which is right out here. And of course, feel free to grab a snack on your way out. Again, thank you and have a wonderful day.
Oh, and I'll just say, if anyone wants my card, I've got them.